Ketchup, you want to take the intro this time?
Sure. Okay.
All right, let's go. Count it down.
Right. So, welcome everyone. This is the what the hell is the name of this podcast again?
You're off to a great start.
I can't remember the name of it.
Talkie time.
I'm drinking. You have no excuse.
I woke up 20 minutes ago. What's the name of this? There was a name. It had a name. It was been given a name now.
Cue the intro song.
Oh, for God's sake.
All right. That's
Okay.
awesome. Awesome. We needed an intro section, so we got it.
Sad to say, I had no intentions of it being that way. I didn't know if there was a name, like some other name for it, because whatever. All right, water under the bridge. Okay, serious mode now. Right, are we ready?
We're ready. Hit it.
I need a sip of tea.
This is all going in, by the way.
Right. Oh my God, I never struggled this much. Okie dokie.
The Ketchup, the professional Quake commentator.
Struggling to do a recorded podcast intro for some reason. All right.
All right.
Damn it, Spud. it sounds like I'm hosting, you know? It's me too.
Oh, you're next. You're next.
Just me that did the intro, all right, mate? Just say this was me, all right? Bite me. We've got the Scrub Lord with us. And,
Okay.
oh, it's
Ketchup,
good.
jar of Mayo.
Take it away.
Okay, I'm ready now. I'm actually officially ready. Are we good?
Okay.
Okay, welcome everyone to the Ketchup, Mayo, and Spud podcast. Unofficial Doom Eternal podcast, 100% through and through, but we always try and get a special guest in now and pick their brains over their background, what they're currently doing in the world of Doom, any accolades they may have, and I think we have a really special guest today, guys. We have none other than the legendary modern Doom speedrunner, BYTEME. How's it going, bro?
Hey, what's good, Ketchup?
It's good to see you again, man. It's been we always seem to bump into each other in Doom Eternal.
No, man, it is good. I gotta say, you know, so much has happened since QuakeCon, you know, and it's been a wild ride. Eternal has been very kind to me, and I'm really thankful. But dude,
You want to elaborate on that? Like kind to you, like how has it affected you? Like how have things been for you since the release, or even before the release with Doom Eternal?
Well, so, you know, I gotta say, like, I'm very fortunate that, you know, there were many elements that kind of, like, came together. I think really have King Dime to thank for this, because he reached out to me last year for an opportunity to be able to attend QuakeCon 2019. And at first, you know, I knew of King Dime, but I didn't really know who he was. So coming from like a security background, somebody reaching out to me about something they can't really talk about was one of those things where I was like, okay, is somebody like trying to social engineer me? Like what's going on? So I'm reaching out to my friends like, oh, do you know King Dime? Is he trustworthy? Which in retrospect is just hilarious, because that guy is one of the most wholesome human beings you could ever know. So, you know, they got me involved, and you know, I got introduced to Tokyo, to 04. I remember seeing the list, and I see Ketchup in there, and you know, I know nothing of the fighting game community. I'm just a all-around scrub when it comes to every aspect of life. So I'm like, Ketchup? Who's Ketchup? I've never heard of Ketchup before. And you know,
you, to be honest, couldn't blame you for that.
Well, no, I live under a rock. Just let me throw that out there and make that quite clear. So, you know, it's funny because like the people who view me, you know, I've got a guy. His name is Doom Guy MG. You know, and he lives over in France, and he's like really hardcore into the fighting game community. And he reached out to me. He's like, dude, you got to meet Ketchup. You know, and so I was like, God, man, I just like have no idea about anything. I mean, it was great. it was great because that whole event really showed me kind of firsthand what id Software was all about. Beforehand, they were just a name on a box, and they made cool games that I enjoyed. But going to QuakeCon, seeing all the people that were passionate about it, all the id Software folks that were working around the clock to be able to pull the thing together, getting to meet, Ketchup, which I know you're not id Software, but the passion for the game and the passion that you show, I mean, it just kind of resonated with everybody else's energy, and it was a great experience, really great experience. And so with the 100% routes that were going on, there was like a lot of hype leading up into Eternal. So when it dropped, I had a bunch of people that came out and were supporting me and were hanging out. That opened the doors to Twitch partnership, and I really have id Software and Doom Eternal to thank for that. I don't think if it wasn't for Eternal, I'd still be struggling down that avenue.
Well, it's just through hard work, man, and I think it's worth mentioning too. I don't want to take away from it too much and chat too long, but for those that are watching the podcast and aren't quite sure what we're talking about, because there's always we get so many different people in here with different backgrounds and stuff like that. QuakeCon last year, it was the year of Doom. It was celebrating Doom, quite a significant anniversary of Doom being around for a very, very long time. So the last year's QuakeCon, there was a day that was essentially called DoomCon, and it was celebrating all things Doom for an entire day. I believe it was the Saturday of the QuakeCon event. QuakeCon's a weekend event, a big celebration of all things id Software. And the Doom portion was essentially to run through most of the really significant Doom installments back to back sequentially, and the team brought on multiple different runners to run the different games. And we had King Dime to do the classic Doom, so it's Doom 1 and Doom 2 essentially, and then we had Doom 64. Zelu ran that, and then Blood Thunder ran Doom 3. And then BYTEME was the Doom 2016 runner, and the games were all in their chronological order, and they played them all back to back, and it was kind of like a marathon style, like those that are familiar with speedrun marathons at this point. It was kind of in the spirit of one of those, and we just sat there and we all had a good time, and these fine gentlemen ran some Doom games and gave us a great show. So BYTEME gave one of the absolute best runs I'd ever seen with the 2016.
Was that a 100% run?
It was, wasn't it? Yeah, it was.
Okay. I remember watching that now. I remember I watched it last year, and I was pretty sure that was you. Okay, for everybody listening to the podcast, these guys know BYTEME stuff much more than I do. I've been more of a closeted freak this whole time until I suddenly started talking about Doom a couple months ago. So I don't know the scene nearly as much as everyone else does. So I wanted to say, yeah, wasn't that you? But just in case I was wrong, I was keeping my mouth shut. But good to know, yes, that was you that I saw. Excellent. That was a really good run.
It was a really sick event, and it did. id Software were very involved in it, and we did the very first kind of speed run for Doom Eternal. We called it 0.4% category because 0.4 is a Quake legend who's currently. He's now doing a lot of stuff with Quake Pro League because he's been with the Quake Pro League for a long time, since Quake Champions has been there, and he was heavily involved in the Doom Eternal side of QuakeCon. And because it was a pre-release build, those that might be watching this podcast, just in case you saw that, it was quite a funny experience because it was a specific build and there were specific rules obviously the players had to follow because it was pre-release. It was like, no, I know it's what everyone does, but try and avoid any exploits or glitches that you find. Like, try not to do them for this because it's one of the first pieces of gameplay there. You've got to get this upgrade station, and you have to kill these demons. And it was a very specific set of rules that normally a speedrunner would never think of. But because it was 0.4's raw, obviously it was to show off a bunch of new mechanics and show off new stuff. So that's why it was done.
Sure.
But we all we all just called it the 0.4% for that in particular run. And yeah, it was quite a fun little piece of content. Yeah, that little.
Do want to add on to that as well. For those who may not be aware, there was no key binding.
There was also no bindings. There was no custom bindings. Yeah, you're right.
So playing through that, I'm playing at the time I was accustomed to running on ESDF, and I think Blood Thunder is an ESDF player as well. But I've got small hands, so my binds are customized so that I have easy time reaching the keys and whatnot. And I'm stretching over with my index finger trying to hit 6 and 7 to pull out the super shotgun and the ballista. You can definitely see if you go back and watch, the struggle is real when trying to cycle through those weapons.
Especially for you, fresh off a Doom 2016 run where you'd already done all that key binding stuff properly. So you've got to do Doom Eternal now, and it's all completely different. I didn't envy you, definitely not. But it was my point was that id Software was so behind that, and like ByteMe said, it was a great event to really showcase how much id cared about their Doom community, and they were hanging out all the time, and they were watching it. They were watching a lot of the runners do their thing, and overall it was a great event. I didn't want to bring us on too much of a tangent, but it was a sick show, and the VODs are all on YouTube. You can find all the games. If you can forgive my frizzy hair, the microphone did not agree with my ponytail, let me tell you. Anyway, moving on now, Byte. So Byte is you're a very prominent speedrunner, for Doom. But one thing I've never had the chance to ask you, and I will give an opportunity for Mayo and Spud to ask their own questions because I'm sure they'll have some. What started your speedrunning journey? I've never heard anyone ask you the question of where did it all begin? Because I'd known you as a 2016 runner, but where did everything start for you? What led you on the journey that you're now on as a content creator and Doom Eternal speedrunner?
So that's a really good question. It started back when the wife, my daughter, and I had moved into our apartment. I had this really old, clunky potato of a computer that had 2 SLI GTX 660s, and Doom 2016 was sitting in my Steam library. I'd had it for months, and I had never played it. And I was eyeing it. I was like, you know what? Maybe I should give this game a shot. And this is way beyond the wave from release. And I dived in. I started on Nightmare because I always like starting my games on the hardest allowable difficulty. And,
wait, so did you cheat and unlock it? Because you have to beat the game on Ultraviolence to unlock Nightmare, don't you?
No, you have to beat the game on Nightmare to unlock Ultra Nightmare, right?
Yeah, I guess so. I don't remember. It's been so long. I thought I had to play it on Ultraviolence before I could unlock Nightmare, but I could just be remembering that wrong. I don't know.
Is it Ultra Nightmare you have to unlock? Yeah, I've got bad memory as well.
I don't know.
I thought Ultraviolence unlocked Nightmare and Ultra Nightmare. Oh well, whatever.
Regardless, I started out on Nightmare. Whether I had to use console commands to be able to unlock it or whatnot, I'm always really big on being able to start out with the real deal. So nice. When that happened, I saw they had a permadeath mode, and I was like, God, this is very reminiscent of Wolfenstein: The New Order, and I loved The New Order, man. That game. When it first came out, I was like, this is the best game ever. It's the ultimate cinematic experience. It's got the gameplay, it's got the story. And, Iron Man mode was one of those things that I sat there and I ground out for 3 or 4 days until I finally got the rundown. And so when Doom had it, I was like, oh yeah, man, I'm going to do it. And I was kind of surprised because that journey was very short. It wasn't as big of a project as The New Order was. And I was like, I think maybe I could turn this into something more. So, with the upgrades for the runes, for the weapons, I went on YouTube and nobody had done a 100% Ultra Nightmare. And I was like, hey man, this might be opportunity. Maybe I can turn this hobby into something more. And especially having, my daughter at the time, I thought to myself, there's something maybe I can do for her. So I got to work, you know, as like the geek side of me and my inner child kind of like met, and they're like, all right, let's go for this. And yeah, I sat there and I hashed it out, and man, my first clear on that thing was like 5 hours long. And I tell you what, it was like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm just sitting there behind my computer desk, being really quiet, going, yes, yes. And it was such a crappy run in retrospect. I knew nothing about video encoding. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's still up on my YouTube page, but if you go and you look at it, the resolution is just trash. The encoder settings is trash. You can't even tell what the hell's going on half the time, but it started the ball rolling, you know, and so like I got very interested in learning how to, you know, understand these different aspects. And really, as somebody, so despite having a computer science degree, I'm not very technologically savvy. You know, I didn't get a smartphone until I met my who is now my wife. I was very can I say this? Can I say that I was Amish for a majority of my life? Is that offensive?
Hey man, I don't know. Just retro. There you go with retro. I rocked the Nokia brick until I was about 23, 24, and people thought I was mad. I was just like, dude, all I do is just text and phone people.
Yeah, man. That was me. That was me. I didn't have a need for a smartphone. I feel like I'm so spoiled now with my Pixel. You know, I wish I could just chuck the thing and forget about it, but now it's like it's a part of life.
Yeah.
If you go to a lot of events too, it's without sounding like that guy, but once you start going to a bunch of different events and stuff, just having the convenience of the entire internet in app form can be quite a lifesaver when, you know, you're trying to contact people or whatever the case may be at shows and stuff. So it can be a bit of it's a shame to say it, because I know there's obviously people that are like, oh, people are so dependent on smartphones these days. But no, generally, if you work in the world of events, a smartphone is just such a vital tool for everything you could ever need it for. You know what I mean? That may just be because we work with video games. Technology is everywhere.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the story. You know, from there, it just I wanted to start optimizing things, and then I wanted to try to branch into streaming, and you know, people started trickling in, and then people started sticking around. And the real cool thing was that when I was able to kind of like get a semi-consistent schedule, you know, the viewers would start offering up routes. They'd be like, yo, you should try this. I think you could shave off a couple seconds here or a couple seconds there. And, you know, I'm always really open to trying things because I'm all about that empirical evidence. And, you know, I would invest in sciencing out routes, and they would offer up things, and we just kind of like mix them together, and it created like this really streamlined 100% route, and it just kept getting refined and refined all the way down to where it's at right now, which I think is like 2 hours and 17 minutes. And you know,
That's amazing.
Fun. It was a fun experience. But yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
What was your because I know from talking with you in the past that you have an arena FPS experience background. You talked a lot about Unreal Tournament back in the day, like in your early days of gaming. What was like the game, do you know what I mean, that like led to, obviously we know how you started your speedrunning, but what got you into like gaming to begin with?
Yeah, it was Unreal Tournament for sure, because you know, I grew up a poor suburb in Kentucky, you know, and I remember we back before we had our 56K dial-up modem, right?
Oh god, I remember. Quake 2 on 56K.
It was I had like Half-Life, you know, and it was one of those boxes that came with like all the expansions. That was like my one birthday present. I was like so excited. I was like, I've got Half-Life, I've got Blue Shift, I've got Opposing Force, and then what's this? It's yellow. It's Counter-Strike. I can't wait to play that. You know, it's just one of those moments where it's, if you were to walk in, you'd like sit there and see what the kid is doing, and then just kind of like shake your head and be like, God, I feel so sorry for you. I was a kid with no internet at the time, running around in a solo match as a counter-terrorist, just pretending that there are bad guys around, going like, "This, I bet this game is really fun. I don't know how to play it, but it's so cool. I wish I had internet." And when I got Unreal Tournament, that game, as I said, I've always been really big on playing games at the hardest difficulty, and dude, I had a hard time getting out of level 1, and I realized, like, I suck. I really got to work on trying to get good. So that started a very long grind, and I can honestly say I did not go about it a very scientific way. I was not a scientific youth. But I made it through. Just through sheer force of will, I made it through. And that was one of like my proudest gaming achievements of the time.
Unreal Tournament was something special. Like a lot of my friends were playing Quake 3 when it came out, and I played Quake 3. I liked it. I loved Quake 2, but there was something about Unreal Tournament, the flak cannon and that minigun it just felt so good. I don't know, something about it, the link gun, all those things were so great, and I got way more into that. And I wasn't playing it online, even though we got the cable modem. I begged my family for a cable modem for Quake 2, but I didn't even play Unreal Tournament online. I just went in and played against bots. And I set them just to the highest difficulty. And I would just sit in there in my room for 8 or 9 hours on one map, just me versus the bots on Capture the Flag. And there was just something about it that, I don't know, that game had something magical, I think.
I mean, it's probably going to be the worst ping in the world, but at some point we should see if we can schedule just in honor of this episode, a 4-player deathmatch or something.
I'm
Unreal.
down.
Do it, done.
It will be like we'll all have like 500 ping, but it will be so worth it. It will be good. It will be better. It will be even better that way.
I think Unreal Tournament. I think the bots. I think they're like the origin of toxicity in communities. Like the smack talk the bots would give you, because like Quake 3 Arena had smack talk from the bots, but it was text. So it'd be like, did it, and they'd be like, yeah, you're crap at the game or whatever. But like the bots in that game would be like, you got nothing. You call that a shot? And you're like, what is this? I never had that in the game before, I don't think we've really had it since. Yeah,
it's like the rude villagers in Animal Crossing on GameCube. They insult you, man. They insult you straight up. There was a different time.
I do remember getting riled up. There was nothing worse than being in the lead on a godlike match that you've been struggling for the last couple of hours, and you're like, oh, I'm going to win this. I'm like 2 frags away, and then that one bot just goes on like this out of nowhere killing spree and then kills you right before you're about to get that final frag and just rubs it right in, drives it home.
And it's always the most annoying bot that's wearing like a top hat or something. I used to have LAN parties back with Unreal Tournament 2004, which to me is just one of the greatest games ever. It had everything. It had a Capture the Flag, it had the vehicle mode, it had bombing run, and we would play bombing run matches. Bombing run is like, for people who don't know, it's like football. There's a ball in the middle, you got to get it to the base and put it through the goal, and plus you have guns. It's great. But I would have a group of nine friends at my apartment. We'd all be LAN together with our big clunky computers back in 2004, and we would set up a team of the 9 of us versus 9 bots on the highest godlike intelligence mode in a bombing run match. So 9 humans versus 9 like immortal intelligence bots, and we would just hash it out, and we would have these 3-hour matches where like no one would score. It was insane, man. It was the best memories ever.
Oh man, it's funny. Before Doom Eternal dropped, I wanted to go back because I 2004 was like the one Unreal Tournament that I was never able to beat on Godlike, and it was because they had that credit system. Like you had to be able to afford entry into like the next level and whatnot. And dude, the amount of hit scan that those Godlike bots can crank out, I didn't realize just how painful it can be in some of those scenarios, but it was definitely something I can see why as a kid I didn't I was not able to go beyond it because there's like certain strategies going up against the AI that you have to adopt that just wouldn't work against humans. Like in humans, you can account for some level of error. There is no level of error against the bots. You know, when they want to kill you, they will kill you.
Yeah, we used to. So my background of that kind of stuff is a little bit different because PC gaming back then was kind of before my time because I grew up in a house with two other brothers. So we consistently had just a console. It was much more efficient, I think, for our mum to get us a console to share rather than all of us have a PC because it was so single player focused. PC games, as in like single setup focused, not necessarily single player. But so ours was pretty much the same background where you would put yourself against a bunch of really high difficulty bots, but the games were just different for us. And I'm curious to see if anyone listening to this podcast now has almost like the console background that might be similar, but for us that was Perfect Dark. The games that had that exact same thing for me and my brother Mustard. It was the big one, which is still one of my favorite multiplayer shooters to this day, is Turok Rage Wars, which was a multiplayer only Turok game that came out on the N64. It was kind of like the Quake 3 style where they were like, hey, look, everyone loved the multiplayer in our games. Let's now make a game all about it. And that's actually what they did with Rage Wars. And it, personally, is the finest, it is the best multiplayer FPS on the N64 period. And it was, that was what we sunk most of our time into. But Perfect Dark, where you put yourself against they were just, they were called sim, right? It was just something sim because it was supposed to be simulation. And so Perfect Dark versus loads of bots, that evolved into Time Splitters. Doing multiplayer against loads of bots in Time Splitters was like super good as well. It's crazy how many of those old FPS games across PC and console all pretty much had the same idea, where you could just put the idea of just playing against bots was huge back then, wasn't it? It didn't really matter what the game was. It was just giving you the option. And it feels like everyone had a similar... If you grew up with FPS, that seems to have been someone's background. It's just the game is different.
Spud, did you have anything like that? Were you into any games when you were young that you liked playing against bots or anything in your first-person shooter history?
It would definitely be the arena FPSs, like Unreal Tournament. I can't think of any others. I mean... Half-Life Deathmatch springs to mind because in Australia, we've always, sorry, my microphone bent over there. We've always had pretty crummy internet. We're not as we're technically a first world country, but our internet has been otherwise for probably until the last couple years. And I had dial-up up until I was early mid-20s, and ultimately, I wasn't really able to play online at a certain point when the world moved on with the internet connection. So I ended up playing a lot of games against bots on Half-Life Deathmatch, and that was sort of that was my go-to because of the limitations. I went to a lot of LANs. LANs was the reason why I have such a multiplayer background is because I think the internet connection's been so crummy sort of forced me to become a part of like LANing communities and having a lot of network friends where we would, do warehouse parties and play games on LANs and Half-Life and all the arena FPSs from Unreal Tournament to Quake 3 Arena and the new Quakes, Painkiller, they were all my go-tos, which all had bots, and when I wasn't playing against people in LAN, I was at home going bot runs on those games,
It's actually kind of insane, and I'm sure Mayo will be able to agree here, how insanely similar old FPS backgrounds are to fighting game communities born out of necessity, and how netcodes were so poor for some people. I think you probably had a better end of the stick being FPS with PC culture, because consoles certainly weren't there for many, many, many years. That a lot of fighting game communities were the massive offline culture was essentially born the same way through arcades. It was arcades first, and then the generation of all of the fighting games being on console, but then having no internet or bad internet, so you still had to go offline to get the proper experience where there's no lag, no delay, and all that stuff. That is remarkable how much in common those two communities have. But bite me back to the man of the hour,
the Scrub Lord.
So the king Scrub Lord.
Talking about how you embraced, like the community embraced you when you went on your journey with Doom Eternal. how did you incorporate the community in your runs? Because I know you're quite a humble gamer. There's a lot of people that tend to sort of do their own thing and just sort of like they're just watching. They're like voyeurs. Where you tend to like, I've noticed from watching you tend to bring people in the mix. Like I noticed a lot of your runs, like you said, people will suggest things, and you'd incorporate into your runs. How much do you find your runs have become like a group experience, so to speak? You know what I mean? Like how much of your runs have you found the tricks yourself, and how much is your community chipped in, do you feel?
So, it's actually there's been a bit of a shift in that particular engagement. I think within the first month, there were a handful of individuals that were really, really helpful, and we're like, yo, check out what I'm able to do. See if you can replicate this, and I was very, very fortunate to have those guys around to be able to offer those things up. But for 2016, that was kind of like lifeblood throughout the entirety of that project. There was always somebody coming in saying like, hey, did you know about this? And it was kind of like one of those unifying experiences. Eternal, it was there in the beginning, and then it just kind of dissipated. And now it's more of just, it's the experience of, all right, we're buckling up, we're going in again. It's more of the, I guess, entertainment factor than it is sciencing it out, because the game is so much different than 2016 was in some aspects. And really, I don't even know if I could consider what I'm doing technically being speedrunning. It's more of there's just a challenge, and I'm trying to do that challenge as quickly as possible. It's not official or anything like that. It's just play games the way that I like playing games, and the way that I'm going about Eternal is just the way that I would wanted to have done it.
So the way that you're going about the game, like you kind of already knew how you wanted to go about it when the game came out, right? Like, I assume that the way that you learned how you wanted to approach 2016, the way that you talk about how the community would come in and be like, hey, what about this? You should try this. The science of it, like you were discovering the science of how to make it work in that time. And so that was more of a prolonged discovery experience. And would you say that coming into Eternal, that science foundation is already established, and so it kind of all comes in really quickly, and now you're just kind of in the enjoying experience now? Would you say that?
That's an interesting comment. So you could argue that 2016 was an exercise in learning how to learn. There were definitely some techniques that I was able to take away and apply to Eternal. However, as odd as this is going to sound, like, when Eternal dropped, I had an entire week that I took off of work to be able to focus on that. But, I'm married, I have 2 young kids, and like that week, despite not having work, it was rough. It was very rough on my wife. The amount of time that was put into streaming was rough, and I stream late at night for the purposes of being able to fulfill my duties as a husband, as a father, and at the sacrifice of sleep. So a lot of the techniques that I'd learned, I tried putting them into play. That then, I want to say, like, the first month of the game being out, it was just really difficult. I just did not have the time to sit down to try to exercise things. I didn't even get a full save library built out until like month 2, I think. It was not how, like, if I was somebody who had all the time in the world, that would have been like one of the first things I would have focused on. It was just been like, all right, let's put in like a 20-hour day, let's get this stuff done, all right, let's hash these things out, let's practice, optimize the routes, practice, that kind of deal. I still haven't watched a full clear. Zero Master got his most recent thing in there. I was like, dude, I'm gonna check this out. This, because I really have been avoiding a lot of the clears that have been done by the other runners. But I chit chat with Zero Master. That guy is like really awesome. And when he had gotten the record at the time, I was like, man, I can't wait to see what all kind of stuff that you're doing. I got to like level 3, and then I had to step away for something, and I failed to pick it back up. So there's like a lot of stuff I just learn from another time. And that's like an aspect I haven't had the time to be able to do it. I know in the latter half of the game there's so many optimizations and so many routes that I'm just completely ignorant to, and I keep telling myself, all right, I'm gonna maybe spend 15-20 minutes, get a little bit further, and then something comes up, and then my segments where I should be streaming rolls around, and I'm faced with like a handful of decisions. Do I try to make some content for my complaint video? Do I boot up and go with it, or do I watch kitten videos on YouTube? And it's one of those three. Typically it's me booting up and going onto Twitch, but yeah,
understandable, because like with Doom Eternal compared to 2016, there's so much what feels like RNG and random glitchy moments that can just end a run. Like I was watching the other night, and you got soft locked for a minute in what was it? Was it
Arc?
Wasn't Terrorist, but yeah, and that's it. That's like you're 2 hours or an hour and a half deep in, and it's like you've got to go through the first 3 levels again. You got to go through Hell on Earth and Cultist Base, and all that. It's just like it is really taxing. Like it's like running a marathon.
Yeah.
So it's kind of understandable with Doom Eternal. And what I loved about Zero Master is there were so many people asking him, are you going to do a run, mate? You're going to do a run? And he's like, nah, I just, his response was sort of like, yeah, it's just like I find Doom Eternal a bit different. And then he just like, 2 weeks later into the game video, he's like, yep, just bust out the record. You know what I mean? And then it's been him and Draku just sort of like facing off since,
Yeah, it's been really interesting watching the back and forth, and now there's a third person that's gone and put their name in, and it's really neat seeing that stuff go. And I know there are a lot of people who are like, I don't understand why you're wasting your time with the no mastery tokens stuff, and I'm sure they've got a fair point. It's just like, for me, the mastery tokens, I can't bring myself to use them. Like when I first saw them and I saw what they were, I was like, this is an easy button.
Yeah.
It's just not my cup of tea. And for me, what made 100% in 2016 was the puzzle aspect, and just threw that out the window in Eternal. You don't have to master runes. You don't have to master every weapon. You can choose a handful of them and be like, these are the ones I'm going to use, and the rest of them will just click a button. So,
well, I mean, the thing is that goes back to really what we've only a few minutes ago we've discussed your sort of gaming background and what's always led you to these more difficult games, is that you've always pushed yourself to do the hardest challenge of a lot of things, even before you knew speedrunning was a thing, even before any kind of competitive gaming was a thing. So, I mean, if people say they don't know why you bother with the no token version, it's like it's who you are to go for the highest challenge. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't even think it's something that personally, I don't think it's anything that anyone can take away, because after even this, just having this chat with you about your background and kind of almost like what your outlook is on these kind of games, like that alone is all the answer anyone could ever need as to why that's the category that you run. And, it makes sense to me.
And one last thing real quick is that, that's not throwing shade on the other runners. I'll say this up and down time and time again, like what Draku, what Zero Master do, and, the other folks who, take up the mantle of the world record for what is 100%. Those guys are, setting world records for a reason. They're really damn good at what they do. I'm not trying to belittle that accomplishment. If they were running no mastery tokens, I'm sure I'd be in a strong third place as well. It's just I like playing games the way that I like playing games, and that's who I am.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that what I like about it is that the mastery tokens are optional, right? Like you don't have to use them, and if you don't want to use them, like that's your call. Well, one thing that I really like about Doom Eternal is that, and the mastery tokens are actually an example of this, is that the game is really well crafted as an experience. Because who are the majority of people who are going to play video games? They're people who are probably going to play the game one time, right? Maybe twice.
Yeah.
And when I first played Doom Eternal, that first playthrough, when I got the mastery tokens, I was mastering the weapons that I was using. And I got those mastery tokens, I was like, oh, cool, I can try out what the mastery looks like on these other weapons. Oh, these are pretty cool. And like things that I never even thought of really considering, I got to suddenly master them. And that's why they're there. They're there for the people who are not going to speedrun the game, who aren't going to play it 40 or 50 times like we have. Like it's the game is really well crafted as a gaming experience, right? And then for the people who want to replay it multiple times and learn it and just learn everything about it and play it on these challenge modes, the option is there. Like you're not forced to use the mastery tokens. You can pick them up if you want, but you don't have to. And that's something I really like about the game's design.
My theory is that they added the mastery tokens because they didn't think to just change the number of how many arachnotrons you have to destroy the turret with the combat shotguns, grenades. You know, it doesn't have to be 25. They could just make it 10. You don't have to put mastery tokens and just change the number.
No, that's actually a really good point to bring up too. You know, and kind of as somebody who looks at numbers and looks at like the construction, like for me, seeing the design choice, like I totally get where you're coming from with regards to like you wanna make sure that you're going to the average player base, because those are the guys that are going to go out there and are going to pick up the DLCs and the next installments, and you want to make sure they have a good experience. But as far as like a well-oiled machine, a game that like can be like really dive deep into, you look at micro missiles. Micro missile mastery can be like taken care of in the first half of any given stage. Like you just tag 3 demons and then you drop them, you pull them back up, you tag those same 3 demons. You now have 2 out of 15 ticks. Whereas the arachnotron turret is like 43 arachnotrons that are like in the path. You don't have to go out of your way to get at the entirety of the game. And there's like, I don't know what the split is, but half of them are in the beginning of the game, then half of them are in the end of the game. And there's just like this barren area and like Terrace Nabad, Sentinel Prime, where there are no arachnotrons. You know. So yeah, when I was working out the routes, that was like one of the biggest ones, was trying to figure out what the hell to do with that combat shotgun, because I was like, dude, this you're like forcing me to have to take this at the beginning of the game, otherwise it's not getting done.
Yeah. That's a fair point. For anyone who's going through a deathless run, right? I guess someone playing the game their first few times, they're going to be dying a bit, right? And so they'll probably kill 25 arachnotrons that way by halfway through, right?
Yeah, that's a good point as well.
How many times are they going to replay those Slayer gates and take off the arachnotron weapon, right? I think that's probably what they were thinking when they set it up that way.
Sure, for sure.
I got a question. You said that. See, I didn't know your Doom history. You said that you had Doom 2016 there in your library, and you didn't touch it for a while, and then you opened it up, and then you got into it. So, what was it about Doom that, I don't know, that surprised you, that impressed you, that blew you away? Like what was it about Doom that captured you?
Oh, that's a really good question. So, in order to answer this, I want to kind of go back to another one of my favorite games of all time. There's very few games that I would consider like, oh man, these are the best. You know, there's the staple Ocarina of Time. You know, it's got that layer of nostalgia and the whole experience that kind of like takes you along through. But Dead Space in more recent time is one of those games where you can look at it, you can see the different aspects, the presentation of the story, the immersion, the combat, just everything all falls in. The music, the atmosphere, the visuals, the way that the characters interact. It's all believable. It's relatable. It's like high quality science fiction horror. And like to this day, I can pick up Dead Space 1, and despite the controls being a little bit clunky, it's still a great game, you know, and it's because the people who developed it put so much attention into the detail of what's going on. You don't want to die in that game. You want to survive. You are Isaac. You are that survivor. And your actions will either lead to a gruesome death or will lead to you, you know, turning the marker and getting the hell off that planet. And so in Doom 2016, it's very similar. There are a lot of parallels. And I'd even venture to say there are a lot of parallels with regards to what happened in Dead Space 2 and Doom Eternal, but we can save that for later on in the podcast. Doom 2016, when you wake up, and mind you, Doom 64 was my favorite Doom game before Doom 2016 came out. So like the end of Doom 64, for those who don't know, you decide that you're going to go back to hell after killing the mother demon, and you're going to make sure that no demon ever rises again. And there's just like this triumphant end screen where you've got like your bald fists, you're looking up at a hellish sky, you know, and this text is just making you out to be the biggest badass that you can be. So Doom 2016, you wake up in a demonic sarcophagus, and once again, the presentation, the story is shown to you. You don't need somebody narrating or telling you why demons are bad. I mean, within the first 2 minutes of the game, you're pulling weapons off of torsos that have been like just horribly mauled, and you know, you're like, yeah, no, dude, we got to do something about these demons. You know, this is unacceptable. The environments are believable. The layout of the buildings, it's like really high quality science fiction. Even though there's a lot of tongue in cheek, you know, it's like the first minute of the game, you're going over to a console and it's like demonic invasion in progress. Like, oh, okay, so you've got systems specifically designed for this. I'll buy this, you know. But as the game goes on, you know, it's got this like really in-depth science fiction story that is believable and relatable. A morally ambiguous cyborg has, you know, found a way to create infinite energy for Earth, and he's transporting it to Earth from Mars through an Argent energy tower. And you know, it's this overarching, you know, anti-hero / deuter antagonist is effectively manipulating you, and you're just giving him kind of a subtle middle finger, doing your own thing, killing demons, getting rid of the quote-unquote hell energy, and you know, kicking ass and taking names in the meanwhile. And yeah, I mean, for me, it was push forward combat, the combat chess, the power fantasy. It all played very well together, because when you first play, you're going to get your butt kicked. No, there's no denying that, unless like you're just really good and you get in there and you naturally. But once you get over that learning curve, like that's a game that you can really get into and you can master. I've played that game so many ways. Like I've run through the entire game with just a pistol, and because the animations are so well done. Like, as soon as a Hell Knight misses one of its attacks, you have a window of time that you can take advantage of. You can pop a shot off on a head, get a falter, go in, throw an elbow at him, do additional damage, get in, get out. It's like you would in, like, an actual fighting experience. If any of you have ever practiced martial arts before, you know, it's all about time windows. Being able to take advantage of certain actions with counter actions and things like that. So it's just a work of art. That's all I can say. Doom 2016 is just like Dead Space in that it's a modern classic in my book.
Well said.
Yeah, I mean, I 100%. It's why I love what they've done with Doom Eternal, because Doom Eternal is very much a game that takes the intricacies. I mean, the biggest thing they did was the increased combat, right? That's the biggest thing Doom Eternal has done for me personally, was just the layers. There was just simply put more layers introduced to the game's combat. But that does bring me on to something else that you know, I'd like to touch on, because it's not every day we get a guest that we can discuss this portion of the game with. But battle mode, Bite Me. So I know that when we spoke at QuakeCon and when I used to watch you and see what you're doing on social media and stuff after QuakeCon, there was a little bit more emphasis of you joining some of the new classic crew, playing some multiplayer in Doom 2016. For those that don't know New Classic, it's just one of the more longest running modern Doom clans that started in, I believe they started really in Doom 2016. And there's just a bunch of players who were just very passionate about the multiplayer, right? And that's just what New Classic is all about. They are absolutely continuing in Doom Eternal. And there's a lot of people that sort of like to grind battle mode and have fun with battle mode. And I know that you're one of those players that definitely jumps into battle mode every now and then. So with the meta the way it is these days, I'd just like to just sit and ask you a very vague question of what do you think of it?
So I think battle mode has a lot of promise. I think that there's some decisions that kind of need to be made in order for it to really turn into something that could, potentially achieve like an esports status. I've spoken about this at length, and I think with its current iteration and the numbers that I've seen from like Steam, which, mind you, not everybody's into multiplayer, especially coming from something that's like heavily single player. Dead Space, and multiplayer whatsoever, pure single player experience. Dead Space 2 had the multiplayer experience, and it was kind of like checking a box, but
it didn't last very long, did it? Right? Like I played the hell out of Dead Space 2, like so much, but I never dove into the multiplayer.
Didn't Dead Space 2 multiplayer have a
interesting.
Dr. Pepper skin? I'm sure it did.
I don't know about that.
sure
You're
of it.
probably right.
I'm gonna Google it right now while you talk. Sorry, bear with me.
It was asymmetric, very much like 2016, except the ratio was 1-to-1. Necromorphs versus survivors, and I feel like Eternal kind of has that same thing going on, where it's a bold new attempt at multiplayer, but even though it's fun, it's engaging, still some areas where it could use some work from the balance and option. I think variability, that's really the key thing, is what decisions can I make? Because one of the biggest selling points of Eternal's multiplayer is that it's a thinking man's game, but there are only so many options, only so many decisions that you can make at any given point in time, that it kind of hurts the overall ability. There's a very active and passionate battle mode community, and those guys are really awesome. They've got some like really high level demons, but the strategies that get employed, they're very very similar. They'll be different every time in the sense that the execution will still ultimately lead to the same methodology and then the same result. And I think that from a design aspect, being able to broaden out options and things like upgrade paths, being able to broaden out options as far as like, what can I do on the field at any given point in time? What are my punishes? That would definitely help in turning it more into, like a chess level thinking man's game, other than kind of what we have now, which is still very accuracy and precision heavy gameplay, with the added element of being able to like throw in demons. And mind you, throw aside like the latency issues and whatnot. On paper, the battle mode as is entertaining. It's not entertaining enough to keep you going back to it like somebody would go back to chess. That's my opinion.
I think it depends on the player too, because I'm like kind of on the opposite end, where like there was absolutely until my schedule's become really busy and it's been hard for me to play any game at the moment. When I was playing, it's like all I'd wanted to do is jump in. I don't even know what it is. There's something about battle mode that I've been very much addicted to. But yeah, I wanted to chat to you about the mode because I know that you've just how I'd love to know how it felt to be so single player focused, but then going into battle mode. And from an early point, you actually definitely, from like fresh off launch, you believe it or not, we're definitely up there as one of the best slayers of early day battle mode, because it was just how you used your weapons. You know what I mean? Like your weapon combos, your accuracy was fantastic. While it's early days and we're all figuring out the meta, right, of how to survive versus an aggressive slayer that just hits all the shots and uses all the right weapons. How did it feel going from single player, predominantly in Doom, that is, and then going into battle mode? But unlike 2016, where it was very loadout focused and kind of like quick switching meta and stuff like that, battle mode was more about, look, you've got all the weapons now. Like, what was the kind of adaptation like for you going from speedrunning into playing against humans but still having all the same equipment? Like, what was the comparison there?
Okay, so this is where like the brilliance of id Software's multiplayer design really shined through, because I mean, it was literally me just speed running multiplayer matches at that point. And I mean, I don't mean to rag on the people that I got paired against, because I mean, they had the struggle of learning, like, hey, this demon's new to me, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, BYTEME has entered the chat, and they're like, all right, guys, I got a rocket launcher, I got a ballista, and I got a super shotgun. Who wants to party? And so like the match would be over in very short order. It was very unfair. That's all I can say. It was very unfair, because a lot of people are trying to get their feet wet, and here I am, like, just coming off of like, oh yeah, I got like an 8-minute hell on earth. I'm feeling really good. Let's go in here and get some battle mode or something. And it's like, in Quake, right? If somebody has poor movement, it's punished by somebody who knows what they're doing, and that was kind of what the battle mode experience was like. I remember the first time I went up against like really good demons, and this within the first month of playing. I used to do battle mode matches with my viewers, and it was fun. It was one of those things where it's like, all right, I'll be a demon with one of you guys. We'll go up against a slayer. We'll learn together. It's just having a fun time. I was playing Slayer one night, and one of my viewers was like, "Hey, I'd like to play as a demon against you." And so it was Nero Redgrave, one of the guys who did Friday Night Fights.
Yes.
And I don't know if they were friends or not. The other guy was like really competent as well. His name was the Static C, and the two of them, like, dude, they melted me. Like Nero's Archvile, I'm just so used to like blind aggressive gameplay, and he punished it so hard. Like I ran into a flame wall, I was then standing in a puddle, and then I was in a hazard zone, and I didn't realize what had happened at first. I was going after an Archvile, and I died. I was like, what the hell hit me? I was like running straight into a brick wall, and at that point, I think I really began to appreciate just what you could do in battle mode. And so that kind of like started my whole demon binge, because from that point onward, I was like, all right, hey guys, we're going to take the remainder of this stream and we're going to turn it into, I'm going to work on beating Nero and Static C. And so that was the remainder of that particular night. And I think I got like maybe 1 or 2 wins on them, but for the overall set, they kicked my butt, and I was like, okay, I gotta learn how to play demons like this, and so that set me off in that direction, and it was fun. While it had its hooks in me, I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, it's just the evolution, I suppose. It's not every day we get an opportunity to chat about Doom Eternal's multiplayer on this chat, and I appreciate it, because, well, it's one of those modes now where it's we've definitely reached a point where the community has dug its heels into what the meta is, and we're starting to see a lot of different demons coming through, and it's always a good time, but not often that you get to chat about it. But I mean, I don't know if anyone else has anything to really sort of mention or ask or whatever it is, but we've chatted a really decent amount here.
Let me see. I don't know.
What's the future of BYTEME with the DLC?
Yeah.
Are you gonna take a week off for that one as well? Keen for it, man.
I don't think so. I think that one will probably be more of an at my own pace kind of deal. Yeah. I don't think the DLCs will have kind of like, I'm not trying to be negative Nancy. I just for me, it's, DLCs are typically smaller experiences, and there's going to be a lot of interest. I know I'm certainly interested to find out what happens with like Hayden and Vega and all that.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's not going to be something that I think I'll want to take a week off for. Trust me,
it's going to be a level or two, right?
I still miss my sleep from that first week.
Actually,
I'm a little curious. You said that you really played a lot of the Wolfenstein game. What was it, New Colossus?
No, the New Order, the one
New
before
Order.
it.
Sorry, I don't know those ones very well. Are there any other series that you have enjoyed playing to the extent that you've played Doom with 100% runs or speed running? Is there any other game that you've really gone in that deep with? And if so, what makes Doom different?
So, Doom 2016 was my first speedrun game, and I'm throwing out air quotes here because to this day I still don't consider myself a speedrunner. That was a project.
A runner. We'll call you a runner.
Yeah. It was for Doom. Game that I think really kind of like got me the most was Battlefield 2142, and completely different. Completely different, not a single player experience. Like I nerded out on 2142. Once again, it's like you got like this believable sci-fi environment where, armies are going up against one another. You got these awesome vehicles, you've got these awesome loadouts. Every piece had a purpose on the board, and there was just so much variety. There were so many different things that you could master in that game, and when you got good at it, it felt great. I remember, learning how to pilot a transport and having like one really good gunner that would hot swap between the different turrets on either side, and we would just fly around the map, and we would end the map, and this guy would have like 52 kills and maybe like 1 or 2 deaths. And being able to go from a pilot to a gunner, whether it was in a tank or in a gunship, or even just getting down at an infantry level, that was like, dude, I picked that game apart, man. I got damage numbers for every single weapon. A buddy of mine who is like really good at coding had developed an interface program so that we could send packets to servers. I had developed scripts so that you could alter certain weapon damages to make things a little more balanced and fall in line. Because anyone who's played 2142, those pocket rockets, the PK rockets, those things were annoying as hell. So,
dude, it was so nuanced, man. That game was so nuanced. Like forget like, there's different classes and all that. Like you could just master being the best pilot of like the hover helicopters and whatnot. Like I remember like in like most of those Battlefield games, there's anti-aircraft, right? Well, like for me, because I always loved being like a pilot in the Battlefield games, I learned to like master the movement of those hover helicopters and basically like just hug the ground and go on highways and just dodge all like the light posts and stuff that usually people would clip themselves on, and just go right across the outskirts of the map and then just hover up above there. Like, do you remember the what was the mode? Titan mode. Where you had the two.
Suez Canal, man.
Yeah, man. And I'd basically like skirt the map, go up above, and then just camp all their vehicles coming out of the Titan and all that, all their spawns and that. And it's just like little things like that could like you'd change the course of the match just from like one play like that. And yeah, man, that game, I feel like the Battlefield series has sort of gotten. I guess I'm starting to sound like one of those old times now. Like back on my day in the desync wars. Right?
Okay, boomer.
I honestly, like, they haven't since 2142. It's sort of, I feel like it's gone a bit more streamlined. Like all I can say is like Metro from Battlefield 3. Just two forces just like hit face to face in a subway. That just sums up the map design. You know what I mean? And 2142. I feel like that was the last golden Battlefield. The high point. That was an amazing game.
Lost many hours of my life to that game, and I'm very proud to say that before I hung up my hat, I was able to successfully get Supreme Commander at least once.
Oh, nice. That was another thing too. I feel like that was maybe one of the first. Like they had the ranking system in Battlefield 2. It was way more addictive in 2142. I think there was better weapon upgrades and stuff that was linked to it. You know, so you're rewarded for your performance. You know.
Oh, dude, the progression was great, and it really pushed you. You know, do you want to unlock all your classes? And it's like, well, I've mastered assault. I've basically used every mod. Let's go into support. And then you're having to unlock that, and it's like, you know, there's the dynamics were just great. With the recon class, you know, you have two different types of sniper rifles. You've got the higher rate of fire, lower damage, and then the lower rate of fire, higher damage, and then you've got this like assault carbine that you could take, which is nothing like any of the actual assault rifles that you had, because like the Voss was a very close quarters combat, you know, spray and pray kind of weapon, but the Lambert just had this very specific recoil where you have like this very tight cone, and if you hit somebody in their mid-torso, they're going to drop. But if you don't know how to account for the recoil or like where to aim, you'd swear the thing was just absolutely worthless.
Yeah, man. All right, I know this is the Doom podcast, man. Ketchup. I've got one last question.
No, go on, man. I'm enjoying listening to you guys nerd out about this stuff.
But this is a controversial question, all right? And if there's anyone like 2142 fans, they'll know what I'm on about. Do you believe that the cloaking device for recon was a smart decision or not? Because I just remember the cheese of just being able to like cloak across the map and just find a high point on a building or whatever, and just disappear all the time after the shots.
Dude,
do you think it should be in the game or not?
I think it was very well balanced in the regard that, like, if you were paying attention, and forgive me if my memory is being fuzzy, you could see somebody who was cloaked, because it was only like 90 or 95% alpha transparency. Yeah. So it was kind of like the Predator effect, and you could hear the whine. And I remember that was one of the things, like in Team Warfare League, which was like the esports level thing that they had back before esports was really big. We had one person would come out. His name was a toddler, which was hilarious because he was like some really old dude. we loved him to death. He was great. But his main was recon, and he used to do the cloak with the Lambert. And when you go into Team Warfare League, everybody's a medic. Everybody's got PK rockets. Everybody's sporting the Voss. There was like very little variability, you know, so it's like just a bunch of people dolphin diving around with defibrillators, you know, going clear, picking each other up, and then, you know, if somebody goes down and people are trying to revive, PK rockets get spammed, and that's how they would do it. This guy, he went in with, you know, RDX, the cloak device, and a Lambert. And, you know, when we had set it up, we had kind of talked about this, and we're like, all right, we're getting our butts kicked on this particular match. You do what you want to do. We got to swap it up. We got to change it. He would go in and he would throw down that RDX as soon as somebody would go down. He would kill like 2 or 3 people that were like just diving in to try to get a revive. It changed the face of that particular matchup. We did a reverse sweep because we basically dazzled our enemies with this cheese RDX. And Team Warfare League, you got friendly fire on, right? So in like pub matches, people would do this thing called RDX hopping, where they'd throw down like this equivalent of C4 explosives, and they would just like kill people and they'd fly up into the air. And they used to use that stuff to get on buildings. But in Team Warfare League, if you would do that, you'd just basically kill yourself. You know, you're a straight up martyr at that point. But this guy, he would go in, he would throw it down, he would run away, he would detonate the stuff, he'd get away scot-free. It was ridiculous. And, you know, for these guys who are not used to running around with the anti-personnel mines, you know, he's also swapping between using the cloaking device, throwing down APMs, and it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. It's like one of those top tier players that you're like, oh wow, I can't believe he just did that. People don't typically do that. And yeah, it swept their legs out from underneath them. It was a great match. It was a great match.
Yeah, that's nice, man. I hope one day we get another, like we're having it, like to fall back onto like the discussion of Doom Eternal. I feel like in traditional FPS, like 90s FPS game, you know, when it was at its peak in the golden era, like the late 90s and 94 to 2000. I feel like we're getting a bit of a renaissance with that, and I hope in the PC multiplayer world we get another 2142, another Battlefield, because I feel like it's sort of flatlined a bit with Battlefield lately, those kind of games. So maybe one day we'll get that. We're getting that now with Doom. I can see, we've got Serious Sam having a remaster now, a new one, and I think
maybe
I think our gamers are in a good timeline. Huh?
Maybe a new challenger enters. Maybe a new title comes out that satisfies that.
I want a new Turok so bad, man.
I could
Dude,
get
I'd be
behind
down for that. New Turok.
It's just the Turok that I imagine I've completely derailed, but the last.
What are you talking about,
FPS
derail? These guys just talked about Battlefield for 15 minutes.
Exactly. We said it. Gasm, it's your turn. Go for it. No, Turok, man. Go hard.
That Turok that Touchstone had their hands in back in like 2008 or something, whenever it came out. It was a long time ago. I can't remember the exact year, but I had a good time with it. I just didn't treat it as a Turok game. It was a fun game. It was a fun game in its own right if you treated it as a standalone shooter. Now, that was one of the games that really sparked my love of all the bloody games that could have sparked my like of multiplayer online FPS. Turok on 360 is probably not the game most people would ever link with that, because it was panned by reviewers. It was absolutely like trashed by a lot of the fan base. And if you're a Turok fan, quite rightly so, I've been a Turok fan my whole life. And that game was not a Turok game. However, there were some things about it visually that still made it feel very much like what could have been. Like, the visuals were absolutely fantastic. I loved the character design. I loved the environments were gorgeous. The different dinosaurs, some of the weapons. Although the weapons were very generic, my favorite weapon on that game was the pulse rifle, because it actually felt like a Turok weapon. The other weapons were just very generic, right? You had pistol, shotgun, machine gun, rocket launcher, sniper rifle. Like, there was none of these big out of this world weapons. They looked like they were super like beefy and Turok-y, but they like mechanically were just generic weapons. There was nothing special about them. Like, the old days of the nuke, even Rage Wars had weapons like the inflator, where you could inflate your opponent and make them pop. You had the emaciator, which would make them really skinny. It was a bizarre game, but it was fantastic. But it's like one of those games where, like, I think if a super competent FPS experienced team got a hold of Turok these days, I just think of, man, in this day and age, what Turok could be with what we now have with the FPS market. Like, it's all I want, man. That's all I want. Either that or Night Dive to remaster Turok Rage Wars and put it on PC with online multiplayer. I'll be satisfied with that. With
remaster. A remaster would be a pretty good idea.
I mean, they knocked it out of the park with Turok 1 and 2.
I think it's, you never know, man. It might, depending on its fan base nowadays. Like, if it's got an online presence that still clearly love it, you never know, it might happen. Because I think in the last couple of years there seems to be kind of like the movie industry. How they started re-releasing films or doing remakes rather. I feel like we're now getting the remaster treatment in the gaming biz. Sequels of old,
such an astute observation.
No, but 2016 felt. No, but 2016 felt like it was sort of out of place at the time. A lot of people were hesitant because the last true Doom was 2004. Yeah. So that's a big gap, between sequels. And now you're seeing all these remasters that people jump on, and remasters are easy money. Like, I recently played Command and Conquer. And Red Alert, the remasters this week, and it's basically the games from the 90s, but just all the mod cons and stuff of modern gaming, like matchmaking and all that, and people are over it, man. And I don't know, mate. You've got way more pull than all of us, Ketchup. Maybe just drop a tweet at the Turok devs, all right?
No, mate. Mate, if you go on my Twitter, you'll see that the job is already done. I did that a couple of days ago. But I've posted about it on Twitter, so now it's official. You heard it here first, guys. The remake of Turok Rage Wars. But it's common of a lot of old games. So some old games have actually aged quite well, and all you need is a more modern means to matchmake. There's so many old fighting games have that same thing. Like, people are asking so bad for like a Mortal Kombat Classics collection where they take a bunch of like the old Mortal Kombat games from the arcade days and just put them on modern systems and give them, you know, hopefully decent netcode and an easy way to matchmake, so you haven't got to go through all these just awkward, complicated channels to play online like you do nowadays. It's quite difficult to set things up. And you have to connect peer-to-peer and stuff. Like, it's a huge headache, and it's a lot more convenient to, you know, something like the Street Fighter Anniversary Collection, which was Street Fighter 2, Third Strike, Alpha's there, and those games have online multiplayer. Even if the netcode isn't absolutely flawless, it's the fact that you've just opened these wonderful games to an entire audience who may not have had the means to play them before, and now they can just boot up their PS4 or get it on Steam, and then load up, you know, Street Fighter 3, Third Strike, and now bam, matchmaking. And you're playing the exact same game as it was back in the day, but now you've just matchmaked against someone very, very easily and effortlessly, and now a whole new generation can experience it. And I do think that a lot of these old beloved games that we hold dear to our hearts, you go back and play them and they're still fun. But that sometimes they're a lot more fun with modern technology. Look at Turok 1 and 2, landmark FPS games back in the day. What really suffered for them was the fog and the frame rate. Frame rate would suffer massively when there's too much action, and the fog meant you couldn't see, you know, 2 feet in front of your face. And they've remastered Turok 1 and 2. The games are exactly the same. There's a couple of optimized changes that you can or can't use. You can turn them off if you don't want them. But they run like butter now. You can see further, and you don't have frame rate issues. And now, just like that, they have become the absolute definitive way of experiencing both of those games, and they are more fun now than they've ever been just because of those changes. So many games would be able to feel that same effect, I think. And yeah, I know this has been a very different episode to what we've normally done. Like, it's been much more just for people that just love FPS, right? Just reminiscing about the stuff that got everyone where they are. And it's almost right that, I think this is why we always love Doom Eternal, isn't it? That no matter your old FPS background, Doom Eternal often has something for everyone. I feel like there's just so many pieces of the game that drew different people from different backgrounds in, that there's always something that we all love about it, and it leads us to be where we are here. And, you know, the Doom Eternal, unofficial Doom Eternal podcast, chatting to people about all the different games that led us to this point, right?
Amen.
Hey, bite me while I have you here. Before we go, it's not often I get to talk about Dead Space. I want to ask you a little bit about Dead Space. I far prefer Dead Space 2 over Dead Space 1. I love Dead Space 1. But I really like Dead Space 2 a lot more because of the tighter controls, faster movement speed, a little more variation in enemies, and a lot more variation in just like the places you go to. When I go back and I play Dead Space 1, I love the Ishimura, but I get a little tired of being there for the whole game, and the camera and controls. Like, sometimes when I die in Dead Space 1, I feel like I didn't die because I played bad. I died because I couldn't see, or the camera was like obscuring me, or I couldn't move. That's what frustrates me about Dead Space 1, as much as I love that game. So I really prefer Dead Space 2 as a gaming experience. I want to know how you feel about Dead Space 1 versus Dead Space 2. Go.
So, you know, I'm glad that you asked this, because earlier in the podcast I mentioned, you know, correlations between 2016 Dead Space 1 and Doom Eternal Dead Space 2. It's very much the same thing, that, you know, for Eternal, Dead Space 2, hands down agree. As far as gameplay goes, it's just sheer improvement, you know, on almost every single regard. But for me, as the overall packaged experience, like, Dead Space 1's gameplay wasn't god-awful. It's not the best, but, you know, it still makes for a fun experience. It can still be mastered in its own right. You know, there are some quirks that you have to be aware of, like, you know, if you start an action, you're not going to be able to get that stasis off. You know, that killed me in my most recent playthrough. Is like I freaked, I panicked, and I like accidentally clicked a button, and I'm trying to throw a stasis at one of those like really dark colored necromorphs that take all of your ammo to kill. And he lunged at me and chopped me into pieces. And so, like, with Dead Space 2, in take the gameplay aside and you start looking at the other aspects, the story, the presentation, those things, I feel like, you know, it's not the same experience as Dead Space 1. And within the beginning of the game, you know, they pretty much already lost me, because in Dead Space 1, the psychological horror that was there, you start out, you're a sane guy, right? The marker hasn't corrupted your mind. You don't know what to expect. It's already got like some really awesome sci-fi trappings. Things go to hell within the first 2 minutes of gameplay, and then it gets worse from there. In Dead Space 2, you are put into the shoes of someone who's effectively lost their mind, but the psychosis doesn't translate well. You know, Cole, who this is a big pet peeve of mine. If you can't get the original voice actress or voice actor to come back to, you know, do it, just write the character out. Do something different. You don't need to revive them as like a different iteration, because already you've kind of severed my ability to believe, especially as somebody who's come in from the previous installment. So they altered the character model of Nicole. They got a different voice actress, and you know, she climbs up on the table and she's got like these static eyeballs and she's got static coming out of her mouth, and she's like, "Make us whole." And I'm just thinking to myself, like, this is too much. This is too heavy-handed. This is not something that is gonna like freak me out, and like that kind of sets the tone for the remainder of the story. In that there's so many better ways that you could pulled off the insanity. Something that, as the player, I think I'm sane, but I'm seeing something that's going on. I can't differentiate from whether or not this is real or not. And that would put me, as the player, constantly questioning what the hell is going on. And they didn't do that. And for me, that was a missed opportunity for some real lame and cheesy horror that just fell flat on its face.
Totally in agreement. Awesome. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
All right,
I never get to talk about Dead Space with anybody, so that was very nice. Thank you.
I love talking Dead Space as well.
I could go on for another hour with you.
Podcast. Thanks for joining me. Ketchup. I think we went all on some mad tangents there, but that's the beauty of gaming, you know.
It's a podcast, man. That's it.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. But I mean, I suppose at this point, you know, the final note before we wrap this up, and guys, because we asked about this last time, and with Bite Me here, it's the final question, and we're gonna rewind it back to where we started, Doom Eternal. So Bite Me, as an experienced speedrunner, you might have a slightly different outlook on some demons that we might do, and maybe weapons too. So I'm going to ask you 2 questions to finish things off, and then we'll wrap things up here, and everyone can get on with their day and all that. Different time zones for all of us, as is always the way. But first question for Bite Me, because we've already answered this question, but I'm going to shorten it. What are your top 3 demons? What are your favorite demons to fight against while you're doing speedruns? In the context of speedrunning alone, what are your top 3 demons?
Oh man.
Yeah, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm very curious to see what you think.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, let me make it clear: no slithering. I absolutely despise slithers. So
no slithering zone.
The whiplashes are terrible. The arachnotrons, you know, no scuttling. There's nothing more annoying than when they like start clinking their front legs on the ground. They get this like cheapy little smile and they start spewing plasma at you. Those are another ones that can go to hell. And you know, finally, God, man, this is such a loaded question.
Well, you're answering with all the demons that you hate. He asked you for the 3 that you like.
I love to hate them, you know? That's
okay.
That's
fair. That's fair.
Really, yeah, with the whiplash, the arachnotron, and then I guess I don't know. I don't have a third, because all the other demons fall into the same bucket. those two really kind of stand out as like you guys are giant pains in the rear. Barons can be nice. Barons I think have really good dance to them, and their animations really kind of sync up. So like you can dance with Barons. So I enjoy that. So yeah, we'll go with those three.
Nice.
Now my final question, again in the context of speedrunning, what's your favorite weapon?
Ooh. Okay, now this one is I'm gonna have to give this one some thought, because I mean the super shotgun is just amazing. I think that like instead of weapons, like weapon combos would be probably a better way to go about it, because like each weapon by itself kind of falls flat. You know, you have to synergize with the quick swapping.
100%.
One of my favorite combos that I've more recently started doing is the super shotgun precision bolt super shotgun. And I like. There's nothing more satisfying than going up to a faltered arachnotron, you know, and then just like point blanking it with the super shotgun to trigger another falter, quickly swapping out to something to get some extra cheeky damage, and then swapping back to finish it off with another round of super shotgun. That's so damn satisfying.
It's nice. Dude, you know what combo I've been playing with recently is I'm doing rocket, micro missiles, and then mastered full auto shotgun. Like those three, man, I'm just having so much fun with that.
It's awesome. Yeah, you know, it's so hard. Like micro missiles are so much more viable in Eternal than they were in 2016. I've just got I feel like I've got unnecessary prejudice from back in 2016 where I was like, micro missiles are garbage. But literally the amount of DPS you can shell out, even without the buff, is unreal. Before we go, you know what would be really sick? If there were such a thing as a mod, getting Doom 20, or getting any Doom, whether it's 2016 or Eternal, with Unreal Tournament weapons. That would be the dream.
Your flat gun.
I can't with the beat hook.
If you just download this extension called Gary's Mod, you can probably probably be able to make that dream a reality, my friend.
That game is scary. There's just about anything and everything in there. Honestly, it's just
take the word sandbox and times it by 1 million.
Yeah.
My last experience playing Gary's Mod was playing as Visor from Quake, but the older Quakes, so the old model of Visor, with Doom 3 weapons against, like, God, I think it was like the warrior bugs from Starship Troopers or something.
Wow.
And I'm just sitting there playing it. I'm on like a stalker map or something. Yeah. And I'm just sitting there with my mate, and I'm like, this was years ago at this point, and I'm just like, I'm doing this. This is a thing that exists now, and this is one of many things that you can put some of the Doom 3 demons in, and using a Half-Life mod that lets you control AI, you can control Doom 3 demons with some of the animations intact. And it's like, it was never intended to work with other things that aren't, they didn't come with the base AI pack. But if you got all kinds of weird it's bizarre. I tell you, anyone hasn't done it, get some mates and get looking for mods and stuff, and Gary's Mod is the most ridiculous. You can do exactly that. It's the most ridiculous thing. And even then, like, I've still been meaning to play those really awesome mods that was the mod you've played. There was someone they almost took the original Quake and Doom 2016 and kind of put them into a blender as well. It felt like very classic modern Doom 2016 experience. I can't remember the name of that mod, Spud. I saw you playing it.
Slayer Testaments.
Yeah.
Dude, he's Shadesmaster. He's still pumping out content for that. Like, there's a big release coming soon. He's basically making Doom Eternal. He's posted things about it, so it's no spoilers, but it's just insane. I can't believe. But the thing is, that's like my wet dream, though. When you think about it, like Doom Eternal with the Quake engine, Quake movement. Oh my lord!
Best of the worlds.
Oh man,
that would have been great. Strafe jumping and circle jumping in a Doom game would be amazing.
That's why I loved by the later end of 2016 multiplayer, I started using the thrusters a lot because it's like it's not the same, but just having that quick burst of movement that you can carry over with the double jump to get a little bit more speed. I was just like, oh, why did I start using this so late? Why didn't I use it a year ago?
yeah, definitely.
But I mean, I don't know if anyone else has anything else they want to add, but we've been going at this chat for quite a fair while.
Actually, I want to ask a question to you guys. I'm gonna turn the tables.
All right, mate. All right.
All right, so we'll go down the line. We'll go Ketchup, Spud, and Mayo. There was one thing that you wanted in Doom Eternal. What would it be?
It's gonna be the most skin deep, like, answer, but I want a Doom 2016 Revenant skin in battle mode. That's what I want.
I can get behind that.
I want that more than anything.
For me, it's a hard one because like the one thing I did want the most was like basically like a remake of Doom 2, and they sort of hit the nail on the head with that, you know, having like the shotgun soldiers in there with the shields and all that. And I don't know, I feel like really complete with Doom Eternal. I think to maybe lean onto the skin side of things, they made every iteration of the Doom guy like a playable skin, except the arena skin from Quake 3 Arena. And maybe that's a Quake nerd coming out of me. Maybe that's not like is it Doom or is it not Doom? Do you know what I mean? Do you count the Quake 3 Arena skin a Doom game skin or not? You know?
I mean, if he wore it.
Yeah. That's the one thing I wanted, because there was all these other things. You had the Praetor suit, you had the Eternal suit, you had the new Gladiator suit. There was no arena suit. I totally wanted it. I love that skin. That's my favorite. That's my favorite Doom iteration. Like his look. You know, like the Doom Eternal Slayer is pretty killer, pretty metal. But there's just maybe it's just nostalgia. There's just something always about the arena Slayer that I love the most.
But if we,
I feel I would have loved to have had a Doom 64 skin. You know?
Oh yeah, I missed that too. Yeah.
100%, especially in as Doom 64, the version of Doom 64 that came as the pre-order bonus is actually so good. It's a really, really, really excellent version of Doom 64, and just the convenience, the convenience of being able to just load up Steam or whatever it is and just click on Doom 64 and now you're playing it. It was a really good, but it still has the authentic feel to it. I've played Doom 64 my entire life. I finally got my for having Doom 3. I bought Doom 3 on my Switch because I was planning on playing it a lot during my travels this year, and then obviously the unfortunate business around the world has happened with COVID-19 and stuff, so travel was completely shut down. But I do still have Doom 3 on my Switch, and I didn't realize that all I had to do was link my Bethesda account from Switch, and it just gave me the red classic Slayer skin in my Doom Eternal on PC, and now I've got it. I'm laughing. I've got all the red skins I could ever want.
Is that your Sector skin that you use?
I use the main skin I use is the Crimson Slayer skin, the one that's like the regular default Eternal Slayer with the red and then the blue lights. That's like the Sector from Mortal Kombat vibes. Who's my favorite fighting game character. But the classic red skin I'm using that now just because I've got it and it's a little bit more exclusive. So I'm using that at the moment. But I mean, if we were talking gameplay, I really, really think that the game's combat and just besides master levels, there's not as much to do. If you just feel like jumping into Doom Eternal and just playing it for a little bit, once you've done, and I don't know whether I'm speaking, I mean, I might be the only one that feels this way, but with the exception of the next Ultra Nightmare run that I want to do, which is all Slayer gates, I can't really say that there's as much left for me to kind of feel like I can immediately jump into just to like switch my brain off for a little bit and just play some Doom Eternal for a few hours before I go to bed or something like that. But I really would absolutely love some kind of arena style like survival mode, and whether that's a single player experience or whether that's maybe another player can join you for the co-op experience. I would love some kind of I don't want to use the exact term horde mode, but I guess it is that kind of that vein of a horde mode, but just something where you can just jump in a personal sense and just
catch up. That would be amazing for the game on streams as well, like for its health on Twitch, because people love leaderboards. They love climbing up like the top 10 or this or that. Like if it's got an active board. I remember playing this game called Hellbound, which is basically like a Doom clone.
Oh, I heard
an
about
indie
that.
game. Yeah, it had it's a wave survival mode, right? It had its own wave survival mode. They were using that to basically fund a campaign, to do a campaign, right? Like a Kickstarter to do a single player mode. But the wave survival in itself was just phenomenal. Like I just enjoyed it so much, and it had a leaderboard, and that became like a narrative itself. Like this journey with trying to like knock down the top 5 dudes, and I'd be number 1 for a while, and then it'd be this other dude, and we just have these little battles. And I feel stuff like that is like, it's really good for a game, because it's like it's like I said, it's like a narrative. People enjoy that. With battle mode, I feel like the only thing that has like a bit of a narrative is maybe like Friday Night Fights. Otherwise, people really don't know who's what. Do you know what I mean by that? Like, there's not. I don't know.
I want to tack in on this as well, because like that whole thing is absolutely great, and wave survival, horde mode, however you want to call it. One of my favorite experiences comes from Left 4 Dead 2. There was like the Helm's Deep level, and I think like, for horde games, like having something where it's different stages where you have to move to different parts of the level, and like kind of like the arena aspect changes the farther in you get. So not only do you have different demons coming at you, but now you have a different area that you have to run to kind of adapt to. So like the level changes, the demon makeup changes, and it just kind of progresses all the way into different levels. So like having like 5 different kind of stages in this one big level, I survived level 1, now we got to run over to level 2, and then getting all the way to the end, and like having different kind of like modifiers and bonuses or whatnot as you go through to contribute to said leaderboard. I think that could have so much potential, for Doom Eternal.
Yeah, definitely. It's just I think it's just so much fun just seeing what you can take, like especially if there's like there is no limit. Do you know what I mean? Like there's no way you can get to the end. Like how some people like they'll just keep adding to the clock. Like you survived it for an entire hour. I didn't think it was that possible, once you hit a certain wave or whatever. I feel like I don't know if id Software listening, seriously, consider a survival mode. People love that. It's so good. Sorry, go on, Mayo.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that ties directly into what I would like to see in the game. Putting aside that I would definitely like to see more story stuff. I wanted more cutscenes. I wanted more story stuff. But that aside, tying into things like horde mode or survival mode, I want difficulty sliders. I want to be able to play the game and tell the chainsaw to recharge at 50% speed or 20% speed. I want to be able to play the game and have glory kills give half the health or 25% health. Like, I want difficulty sliders. I want to be able to double enemy HP. I want to be able to cut my ammo in half. Like, I don't want to ask them to like change, like put more heavy demons in there, because I know that demon placement is very specific to the flow of rooms. But I want to be able to change the values of the game, because I think that would be a really easy thing to implement and something that would just create extra challenges. I mean, what if you had a horde mode and like a co-op horde mode, but it turns out that really good players could just kind of like coordinate really cheesy ways to just get through 50 levels of horde mode with no problem. Well, what if you could go in and make it to where you only had half the ammo, or the enemy had double the health, or your chainsaw recharged super low, or you got less health from glory kills, or your flame belt recharges at 1/4 the speed? Like those kinds of things, that's what I would love to see in the game.
Yeah, man, it adds like a variation in that,
Yeah, like
definitely.
a player customization experience.
Mutators
Mutators that wouldn't require the developers to actually like have to restructure things. Just give us the ability to change the values of certain things that recharge or give health, and just for that extra challenge. That would make me very happy.
I tell you, just take Doom 2016's Demon Rune and just chuck it into that mode survival, where you can take one of the demons that you get in battle mode, and every X amount of time you can spend your Demon Rune, become the demon in like a specific moment of the wave. Like playing as the Revenant in campaign was really fun. You know what I mean? I'm gonna preach that idea until the end of days. But it's I mean, for me, it's more just that. Once you've reached, once you've done Ultra Nightmare and you've done all the difficulties and stuff, and you've nailed all the master levels and stuff, you reach a point where you very much have to kind of create your own challenges from that point on. It's what kind of inspires a lot of those runs where people go, okay, well, I've done Ultra Nightmare now. Wonder if I can do Ultra Nightmare without upgrading my weapons, or I wonder if I can do Ultra Nightmare without ever using Crucible, and things like that. Like there is very much there are challenges that people can create themselves. I absolutely agree with that, and
that stuff's real fun.
All the power to people doing that kind of stuff. There's nothing wrong with it at all. It's just for those that want something a bit more immediate and something to jump into. I think that kind of idea would be a nice little solution for someone like me who, I'll be editing all day, or I'll be doing a stream or a broadcast commentating for 12 hours, and I'll finish before I go to bed. I want to jump on Doom Eternal for a bit, but I can't find a lot of things that I immediately feel like I can squeeze in. It's because I've done so much of it already. So it's one of those things, I suppose. That's the strength of an almost endless content mode brings that forward, doesn't it? But we've been, this has been a really fun stream. It's been a bit more. There's been a little bit more of a slightly more casual. I mean, these are already quite casual, but there's been a bit more of a casual vibe to this one than most. I think it's been quite fun, just having a bit of a almost roundtable discussion, isn't it? This time around.
It's been nice.
I gotta say, I really appreciate you guys having me on. It's been an honor and a pleasure. It's always good to hang out with Ketchup and you, Spud, and Mayo. It's been a pleasure getting to know you a lot better than I did previously.
Well, I mean, I was going to thank you anyway, and I want to thank you again, BYTEME, for joining us before we finish things up. Let the lovely people listening to this podcast know where can they find you and how can they watch your content.
You can find me at youtube.com/BYTEME or twitch.tv/BYTEME.
BYTEME nailing speedruns on an almost daily basis at this point for Doom Eternal. If you
want me with a Y. Bite me with a Y.
Oh yeah, it is with a Y. We'll emphasize that in the comments. But definitely, if you want to check out some insane speedrunning action with the entire game, then look no further. That's all there is to it. I want to thank Spud and Mayo. I mean, no, this is Mayo's thing, but I think it was just for the topic of discussion, traded off. But as this is your thing, Mayo, I will let you close the show.
Sure. Yeah. If anybody has anything they want to say before they go, I just want to announce real quick. June 15th, check my channel. My official Doom Eternal review will be live on YouTube.
Oh,
it's
I'm looking forward to that.
Almost 40-minute review that goes in depth into gameplay, level design, how Doom Eternal teaches new players how to play, sound design. You guys are gonna love it.
It's gonna be biblical.
And that's me. So that's me signing off. Goodbye. You guys do your thing.
Spud.
Assemble. Until next time. Peace. Flying to the sky.
I got to get my weekly plug. If you want to see what the highest level of Doom Eternal's multiplayer looks like, look no further than Friday Night Fights, 7:30 p.m. ET. You can find the show over at twitch.tv/Bethesda, where myself and Tokyo Punch-Out bring on 3 extremely prominent community members every week, and we just have them play. They play a bunch of games in advance. They are then their POVs are added together and chopped up to create a spectator experience, and we call the action and we bring the players in. And similar to this, actually, in between maps, we just have a discussion, pick their brains about their background, the way they play, any tips for new players and stuff like that. And it's a fun piece of community activity. So every Friday, 7:30 p.m. ET, twitch.tv/Bethesda, Friday Night Fights.
All right, I'll do a bit of a Doom plug before we all bounce. Recently, during the first couple months of the Doom Eternal release, Insane Gazebo, a Doom WOD mapper, he released a new map for his epic WOD called Sunder that he's been developing for what feels like about a decade now. And I didn't get around to playing it during that time because of all the Doom Eternal hype. So soon, I guess on twitch.tv/thespudhunter, I'm going to smash through map 19, the new map of Sunder.wad for Doom.
Will you message
the
me,
next week or
please?
so.
Message me when you do that. I want to watch.
Keen, man.
Same, actually.
Yeah, it's if anyone knows Sunder here, it's like Doom Eternal on steroids, but in Doom 2. it's just just imagine 100 arch files, in a room. You just got to figure that out. One pillar
No
to
ice
dodge them
bomb.
all.
Well,
Yeah, thanks for being a part of this, Bite Me. Keep smashing Doom, and it's going to be awesome to see what you do next after Doom Eternal, because I know there's actually that I know we've all said our piece, but where do you see yourself going after the DLC's done? Because there is going to be a large gap between the next Doom release, the next major game. Now that you're because you've grown through Doom 2016, and you're quite a humble gamer. You call yourself the Scrub Lord. I feel like there's almost like this
Correction.
You've rebranded?
I'm a mere Scrub Lord. I'm just a Scrub Lord.
I'm mere Scrub Lord. Yeah.
A weird title held by the guy who reviewed Doom Eternal and did an amazing job getting stuck in some very obvious places. But, someday, maybe I'll get promoted to the Scrub Lord, but I'm not there yet.
When you start punching plasma ammo. Yeah. Yeah. No. Where do you to finish it up? Where do you see what's your next thing, bro? Like, what's your next what's the next chapter?
So I think within the immediate future, I'm gonna try a swing at some content creation, because I have some opinions about some things that I want to try to cordially convey, and in the distant, more long term, I'm gonna get heavier into getting better at Quake, and when Diabolical drops, I'm definitely going to working on trying to improve my general AFPS skills in that game. I think there's still a lot for me to learn as far as like raw mechanical aim, positioning. There's so many high level constructs that I was not privy to, and I'd like to hone those. So that's going to be my goal, and then hopefully I become less of a scrub through trial by fire. And then when another amazing experience like Doom, hits, I'll be ready.
Oh yeah.
Awesome, guys. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it there. I want to say thank you to everyone who continues to listen to the Ketchup, Mayo, and Spud podcast. If you know a Doom fan who has not heard us, go ahead and send them a message, tell them about this podcast, and we're going to have more guests coming up soon. I want to thank you to Spud and Ketchup and our special guest, Bite Me. And everyone want to say a quick goodbye. Spud?
Peace, gang. Thanks for having me on this podcast. It was always a pleasure talking with you guys, and hanging out for the next one. DLC soon, TM.
Ketchup.
Yeah, it's same as always. Thanks a lot for having me, and on to the next one, I suppose. Cheers, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Well, yeah. All right. And Bite Me, thank you very much for joining us. Anything you want to say before we go?
Yeah, this has been fun, and I appreciate you guys having me on board. My name is Bite, and you all can bite me.
Go. All right, great. All right, see you guys in the next podcast.